All right, and welcome to my whiskey den. And tonight we have Mike and Ben as always, and from Northern Waters Distilling in Minocqua, Wisconsin, we have Peter Nomm. Thank you for being here. Before we start, let's hit that high note.
Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3. Let's get some more. Clap your hands. Some more. Just get some more.
All right, now we can start the stream. And before we get going here, just a couple people I saw out in the chat. We saw Eli, I saw Icehouse, Spencer, Arthur from down in Texas. Thank you for showing up early. Everyone kind of filters in after a couple minutes, but thanks for showing up on time. Punctuality is so nice. We appreciate that. And what is everyone out there in the chat drinking tonight? And what are you three drinking right now?
Go ahead, Peter.
I've got a little still an oak rye whiskey from my friend Guy Rayhorse down at Great Lakes in Milwaukee because my rye won't be out of the barrel till tomorrow. I had to borrow a little of his tonight.
Just showing some restraint. I respect that.
Tough.
I don't have much of it, so I'm glad I'm not down there by you. I'd be edging you like, well, shouldn't we taste it? So we should try it tonight. Come on, Pete.
We might have done that already.
Mike, what are you drinking?
I've got a Mackenzie bourbon finished in Chinkapin oak, and then I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to put behind that.
Nice. Hey, Paul, thanks for stopping in. Paul says hi, Pete. So I can put stuff up on the screen so you can see it too. Shows up in the side. We'll put it down.
Tell Paul I've got a bottle waiting for him here.
See? You seem to have bottles waiting for all sorts of people. So that's pretty nice of you. He was nice enough to my bottles got muled here, and I didn't even have to do anything. It was kind of ridiculous. So you have some nice friends and a good supply chain. Working out on that.
When you make whiskey, people are intrigued. Let's put it that way.
Ben, what are you sucking on this evening?
I got the 6 and 20 Carolina Rouge, so it's their wheat whiskey that's been finished or aged in the Cote Rôti barrels. Nice red wine, earthy finish, and pairing really well with the cigar tonight. So
yeah, you're hiding out on the porch there. But like we were saying, Pete, thank you for stopping in, chatting with us this evening. Like I was saying, you're up in Minocqua, Wisconsin. Minocqua is kind of like it's kind of like a vacation town. I know there has permanent residents, but I mean, in the summer, I know you guys blow up with seasonal residents.
Yeah, there's 4 of us that live here year round, but the rest of them are up and back and forth. But it's, if you've never been here, once you get up here, you'll be back. It's a great place. It's woods, water, no stress, unless they shut you down. we talked about that enough. So it's a great place to be, and everybody comes from all over the place. You wear something that says Minocqua on your shirt, and you fly through the airport, someone's going to tug your sleeve and say, "Where are you from?" It's a great location. It's awesome to live up here.
It is. It's like I said, it's a really fun vacation spot for the family, and just even if you're going on like a little day trip with you and your wife or girlfriend, whoever it is, it's a lovely place to get away to. Let's see here. Sorry, well, then we flip back over. And just, what was the first, we always ask this, what was the first whiskey or spirit, doesn't have to be a whiskey, what was the first kind of spirit that really got you excited, it sounds bad, but about drinking, kind of started pulling you down the path to where you are now? Well,
it'll really sound bad because I started because of a friend of mine drinking just a J&B blended scotch. I still have bottles of that at home because why not? There's other scotches I like a whole lot better, but all of a sudden it's like I wasn't ordering beer anymore and I was drinking J&B. And then a friend of mine got into Jameson, so we were drinking Jameson. Of course, it's like, all right, we're drinking these. What other whiskeys are out there? And of course, well, yeah, here we are. There's an endless supply of types of whiskeys, and that's what makes it just fantastic. It's no end. I mean, I'm looking at Pat, your bar up above your head, and that's 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of 1% of what's out there. It's whiskey's just never ending. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about it.
when you can start getting about 7 to 10 different bottles from a distillery every time you show up, it gets kind of exciting. It also gets expensive, but it gets exciting.
Yeah.
And before I lose people, Big Swimmer says Troy needs another bottle in Connecticut.
Tell him to come pick up his tank, and then he can have whatever he needs.
Now, what made you want to start Northern Waters Distillery, and was there a turning point or a moment in history or kind of moment of clarity that that really sets you going down to opening a distillery? Because that's a pretty big decision.
Yeah. I used to travel a lot in my former life, and it seemed to be we were in the Tennessee, Kentucky corridor quite a bit, and there's a lot of distilleries, believe it or not. So I would send the wife and kids shopping, and I'd hang out at distilleries. And I think it was 2012, I walked out of one. It was a smaller town, and I said to my wife, how come we don't have something like this sitting up here? And driving back from Tennessee, 12 hours back to northern Wisconsin, boy, the wheels started turning, and I just went and talked to as many people as I could that were doing it already, because I was fascinated by whiskey anyways. I'm a geek, I read about where they're from and all that, and I just thought of every reason not to start a business like that, because that would be stupid, right? But there was no reason not to do this, and that was the bottom line. That's how it all happened. So frankly, about a year later, we had our permit application in a small location. I mean, we started in 1,500 usable square feet, 400 of which was production. So, I mean, we started off really, really small, but we started it off, and it's just been a great adventure since then.
Well, and recent, was it last year you guys moved into the facility you're in right now?
Yeah, we've been here about a year and a half now. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And with that, I was going to say, now I heard that it was a significant jump in size, like you're talking about. How are you enjoying the new space?
Yeah, I mean, production-wise, it's great, because I mean, this old building we were in, it was a perfect start. It was fantastic, but you literally were positioning things on your floor because you knew where the stronger supports were underneath the crawl space and all that. You're worried. I mean, you would hear noise and you're worried that something went through the floor. So the good news is we were able to be in business for 4 years and kind of knew what we wanted. So planning out this facility, we knew how to position things, and we knew what we wanted to do versus coming to it cold. So coming into this so much better. We can, we have the space to do, and our capacity is very small, like I said, but we have so much room yet to grow within the footprint we're in here. So it's great. The nice thing too for me is that I have 2 really good guys that work for me and do the production, which they can handle the day-to-day stuff, but allows me to experiment and play with the new recipes. And both of them really get into, let's try this, let's try this, let's try that. Nothing's off the board. I mean, I know it's a whiskey show, but we've been playing with agave, for example, the last few weeks. We're going to do a tequila type product, and that's been coming along real well. And nothing's off the board right there. Nothing.
No, that's fine. Hey, we're whiskey, but we'll drink whatever. There's good stuff in every category, and we're slowly, as reviews will come out, we do have some rums, we do have some tequilas and other stuff we're looking at coming up, because people are doing some really great stuff in other categories too. So yes, we're a whiskey show, but I mean, really, it's about finding something you like when you go out to a distillery, because a lot of times, like for me, if I'm going someplace, I'm going for a band, I'm going for some reason, and then I'm going to also, well, now it's going to a distillery as well too. But before it was like, this is a neat add-on to the trip. I was like, well, we're only 10 minutes away from this place. Let's go check it out before the show and then see what's going on. And on that note, you have live music at your distillery quite a bit when you're allowed to be open. You have quite a bit of it, don't you?
We do. I mean, it's still small. The tasting room is less than 1,000 square feet. So we typically have a solo act, a duo, as much as a trio come play in here. Try to do it at least once a week, and then sprinkle in a few other days, maybe 6 times a month is what we do. I play music myself, so I want that sort of thing. That was always in the picture when I had the idea to do this. There's had to be some music component to what we do in here. So if we could get 6 performances every month, that's our target right there. That's great, because it's small groups. The musicians love it, because we typically end around 7 o'clock instead of midnight or 1. And some of us are getting older, and we like those earlier nights. I thought this was a 6 o'clock show, by the way, and then you said it was 8 o'clock. I'm thinking, hope I could stay awake this long.
It's 9 o'clock for me in real time.
Yeah, I'm done.
He's always arguing that East Coast. That's not the real time. Man. It doesn't count.
No, there's a reason this is called Central, right?
That's right. So have you given thought to or plans to what your size will be? Have you thought about not being above a certain size, or trying to keep yourself at something manageable, or the sky's the limit?
Yeah, I mean, there's two schools of thought on it, and I have both, and I don't know that I share one more than the other. I mean, I like the manageability of the size that we're at. Having 2 employees who are really good is a lot nicer than having 20, for example, as far as managing that. There's a certain degree that wants to grow and do more than you're doing as well, obviously, because that's part of why you start something, is to see how big you can take it. So we have a lot of room to grow where we're at right now. That decision is not at least up front and center. What will get more and more interesting is as the whiskeys progress, because that's what requires more space for the barrels and for supporting that with the different grains and your inventories on that. So, the next step, if we had to do something, would to be have a facility off-site versus where we are that was more on the production and storage end of things, whereas this would probably maintain as the showcase where we do the tours and have the gatherings, et cetera, et cetera. So, it'd be nice if we have that problem where we've outgrown this building as well, but we're a little ways away from that yet.
So are the laws in Wisconsin good? Like, for if you wanted to make a change, are they pretty good for you to do it, or would it be a pain?
Yeah. Wisconsin's definitely in the better half of the states as far as what they allow us to do. So really, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. It would just be a tiny little bit of paperwork, both federally and state. So if that has to happen, that would be basically that's not a consideration, or not a hindrance if we want to do that.
And where you're at is it's on one of the main highways, cutting like right through town, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you come into town, it's where the speed limit drops from 55 to 35, and we're on the right side, which is even easier to get in and out of. So, it's a nice spot. This lot was for sale for many, many years, and we've been watching it. When the time was right, we swooped in and got it and built the building here. So it's been good.
That's awesome. That's
Go ahead, man. I saw you guys. This really intrigued me. You guys have this kind of like operations day or something where you have people can come in and basically spend a day,
Yep.
Kind of like getting their hands on and what's going on with the distillery. What was the brainchild, or what was the thought behind that process, and what kind of response are you getting? Because to me, that sounds amazing. That's something I would love to see more distilleries.
Yeah, I mean,
do.
I tell people when we do our tours and all that, we've been making whiskey for about 6 years, which means we know about this much. So we're learning, and we learn from other people, and other people learn from us. So the whole spend a day, basically, most people who have done that are interested in starting a distillery themselves. We've had a few people that are just kind of intrigued. Maybe it's an anniversary present. They come hang with us and learn how whiskey's made. But most of them, actually, it ends up being a class for people that are looking to get into this business. And so not only do we go through the process, and they're with us mashing, and they're dropping the 50-pound bags of grain into the mash hopper and doing all that, but we're also talking about the reporting end of it and who the suppliers are that we use. And so that's good. I mean, most of our clients for that are for that purpose. And what I really like is some of them already have distilleries now. A good friend of mine just got his DSP, so he's legal now. And we're bouncing back ideas all the time. In fact, one of the guys who did it, he's a couple hours north of us. He and I probably talk every week because he's doing things I've never done. For example, we started apple brandy a couple weeks ago, and I know he's already done that. So I talked to him, and now we're bouncing ideas back and forth. So it opens up an awesome network, because somebody knows something I don't know, and I know something someone doesn't know, and we can always put that together. That's why we do that. But on top of that, we've just started a create your own whiskey program using either 5-gallon barrels or 15-gallon barrels.
Oh, man.
So let's say, Mike, you want to make your own whiskey, and here's all the grains we've got access to. And you come in on the day, you pick the recipe, we mash it in. Week later, we come in, distill it together, fill the barrel with it. And whether it's a 5-gallon or a 15 or whatever we do, come back and forth every once in a while. Let's pull it out of the cask, and you tell me when it's ready, but it's your recipe. We'll create some sort of a custom label depending on how many you want out of it. And, it's an experience, whiskey is, as we all know. Not just on the consuming end, but the producing end too. And the more people understand what goes into it, the more they'll appreciate the end of it, the end product.
Yep. And that's just what Spencer was saying. Create your own whiskey. Yeah, that's really similar to something Dingle did when they first started theirs. They had the founding fathers, where it was like you kind of pick kind of a mash bill, and then they had like 4 or 5 different barrel finishes that you could leave it in, and you just decide when it's ready and do what you want with it. And thought that was a great idea. So I'm totally behind that. That's, and especially when you're talking about like 5-gallon barrels, like you could,
you can have something nice in a year. You don't have to wait 15 years for it. You can have something nice in a year. Yeah. I mean, there's debate on small barrels, what they do or what they don't, but the reality is you can create something really nice that you're going to enjoy. And if you have a 5-gallon barrel, you got a lot of friends you can share that with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an amazing. I mean, that to me, and that's something I see, I guess, special what craft distillers can do versus some of the big guys. I mean, I don't. It just doesn't seem like that's something very viable for them, whereas you guys can bring people in and get really hands-on and educational, and that to me is phenomenal.
Yeah, whiskey is, I mean, we get questions every day, and there's simple questions like, what's the difference between bourbon and whiskey, or things like that. A lot of people have brewed beer at home or made wine, and we drank that but people don't know much about spirits, and why is vodka vodka? Why is rum? I mean, every tour we give is an education for somebody, but an interesting education. It's not school. So taking it to the whiskey end, when you can get people in, they understand why we're so excited about what we make, and we're so excited about what we get to drink here. I mean, that's there's no end to the possibilities.
And that also creates like a whole other experience, which is kind of that whole traveling thing, where distilleries are becoming like a point of travel, like a travel destination in a city or someplace you really want to go to. And that's another way to create like a really kind of deep connection with people, is kind of sharing an experience like that. Because not only you're sharing your mind, you're helping someone create something that typically is kind of off limits.
Right.
You're not allowed to have a still at home. But
nobody does.
No one's supposed to have one at home. I may have heard some rumors about some people, but I was gonna say, you get to kind of, like you said, you get to create something that, see where it goes, see how it lends. It's almost like pulling yourself into your business. And that's a really awesome idea. I can totally get behind that. I dig that a lot. Yeah. Now you were talking about 5 and 15-gallon barrels, and I know you use 15s for a lot of this. The 2 whiskeys that we got, one was the straight wheat, and the other one was one that you finished. It was a bourbon one that was finished in a Cabernet. Are you guys ever thinking about moving up past 15-gallon barrels, or have you already done that?
We have. We actually, in our old location, you literally couldn't have anything bigger because it would go through the floor. So we've been
figured by the size of the building. When I looked at it, I'm like, you really don't have a lot of space to be going. We're going to put a bunch of 52-gallon barrels in.
No, there wouldn't be many. So, I mean, everything that we've got releasing anytime soon was made at the old location is in a 15 or a 30. A little over a year ago, we started filling 30-gallon casks, and now we're on a handful of 53s as well, the full size. So kind of as we're looking at it strategically, we're going to keep filling 15s until the 30s have adequate inventory. And then we'll kind of get away from the 15s and do more 30s until the 53s have a good amount of inventory. And of course, we'll still stay with the smaller ones because we can do those experiments and have a short-term aging. But we're getting to the bigger and bigger barrels as we go. And we have the space for them too, which helps. And a forklift, because you're not lifting one of those by yourself. 2 of us, I'm old. I mean, I can help on a 15-gallon barrel, but anything bigger than that, you need help. Mechanical help.
No, but that's good, because I was going to say there's, and these ones don't have too much anything like of green note, but there's a lot of people that in craft distilleries where you don't have a very good craft distiller, they'll be using a small barrel, and you'll get like a very thick kind of piney green wood note, and you guys don't have that, and it's a testament to that, because that usually sticks around in the smaller barrels. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I don't want to
finish up.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, that's the debate. There's good whiskey you can make in small barrels. Some of my favorite things we actually did in a 5-gallon cask. I don't know how my 30s are. I don't know how my 53s, because we're not there yet. But if I've noticed anything with ours, what I want to see better from our whiskeys as they go forward is your first sip of ours is got a little more chunk to it, whereas the finish is nice. It's got the flavor I want. Where I find in the older barrels, the bigger barrels, it's a little softer on the first sip. I like personally our finish better, but I like their start and vice versa. So, I mean, that's what I don't know yet. That's what I'm assuming we'll get as we get along with the bigger barrels. But most importantly is we can control what goes in first. And when you control that, then at least if it's good going in as a white dog, it's going to be good coming out regardless of what size it is. It may be better with a bigger barrel longer. It may not. You just never know depending on a particular type of spirit. But one thing you can't replace is time, and that's what gives some good character to a lot of whiskeys we love.
And we were talking before the show about how you were using even the 15s. You were kind of using like second fill barrels, not necessarily like first fill barrels, to kind of lighten up a little bit of the tone of it. Which I think is a great idea, because I was going to say that's something that's a lot of people won't do. And we were all saying that even in bigger barrels, like that second fill one is becoming more, I don't want to say standardly used, but it's becoming a little more prevalent. People are starting to use that more frequent rather than just going with the first fill. So
yeah, it's a whole different animal. I mean, when you tell somebody that you could put bourbon has to be a brand new cask, but if I put that exact same whiskey, it doesn't. You can't call it bourbon, and they'll ask me, "Well, why not?" I'm like, "Well, if you look at it, it doesn't look the same, it doesn't smell the same, it doesn't taste the same. So that cask makes such a difference on it, and that second fill cask takes a while longer. I mean, that's why you see 15 and 20-year-old scotches versus something that's 4 or 5 years over here. Ben's got the airplane overhead. Anyways, that's just. I mean, that's. There's so many right ways of doing it. That's what's interesting about this. There's a few wrong ways, but there's more right ways of doing this stuff. And the different types of barrels all kind of create your own signature, and that's what makes it fun. Every time you get to crack one of those open and try it when it's been sitting for years, it's pretty exciting.
So yeah, I want to ask you about your double barrel, because that a couple people actually have brought up double barrel in chat. I think Big Swimmer was one of them, but I was reading about it. So what made you start that, other than, you got a chance at some barrels, but what's been your favorite part of that, or your favorite whiskey?
So Big Swimmer, by the way, he's a really, really, really good home brewer who I actually tried to hire for the last 3 years here until he moved to Connecticut, which can work for me because he knows how to make spirits. I'm assuming he wouldn't have anything at home, but anyways, he brews a lot of beer. And so when we were getting to the point where we had our used casks, I would get a lot of breweries say, we have one in town. Hey, can we do something with that barrel? Sure. Here's a bourbon barrel for you. Let's have a bourbon barrel aged beer. I love those things. Had a winery reach out to me, in fact, just south of UPAT down in Denmark, Duck Creek Winery. I work with them all the time. And of course, the latest thing is the maple syrup producers. If you're on a farmer's market, the hottest thing out there is bourbon barrel aged maple syrup. So you take those three different components, give them your bourbon barrels. What I do is I give them the barrels for nothing, but then I get them back. And typically I get some of the beer or the wine or the maple syrup that comes out of them then. And then we can finish the whiskey that's already been aged to a certain extent in those casks. So you have something that's already complex and interesting, and then you throw in a second cask, whether it's a wine cask, a beer cask, or the syrup cask. The syrup casks generally are pretty consistent from one to the other because maple syrup is pretty consistent from one to the other. Beer casks get a little more interested, and by the way, I never knew his name was Big Swimmer, so that's going to haunt him. Then I know that, or maybe that's. We'll find out. Anyways, he's done a lot of very interesting beers that I've given him the barrels, and he did a Scotch ale, for example, or a vanilla porter, and then we'll get that barrel back. We'll drink the beer and we'll fill it with bourbon again, and then let it sit for another 15-gallon wise, 8 to 10 months, and then bring that back out. So then it'll bear some character of whatever was in there. But the biggest variance is the wine casks. A white wine finish versus a red wine, or a port wine, or a sweeter wine versus a drier wine. They really make a big impact on what the finish of the whiskey is going to be like versus the other ones too.
Let's
So what are some casks? Sorry.
no, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I was saying, what are some other casks or different barrel finishing types that you're interested in doing that you haven't gotten to tackle yet?
Well, I mean, between beer, wine, and syrup, that's basically it that we've done. Now, within the beer end of it gets interesting. Like we've gotten some very hoppy IPA type thing or saison, which I didn't want to put whiskey into. So then we throw gin into those,
Okay.
and get a finish off of there. I work with a lot of home winemakers and home brewers, and they'll ask me, what kind of beer should I put into there? And the easy answer is this: something we've never heard of before. Cherry wines, strawberry wine, fruit wines, dry wines, you name it. They're all something different. I mean, I think a general theme that people get when they talk to us about what we do here is experimentation, and we're always playing with things. I'm excited when we get an empty peach wine barrel back that had bourbon in it, because we're going to throw whiskey in there and see what that does. Yeah. Ben's thinking peach because he's in South Carolina.
That sounds really good.
Yeah. So
have there been any of those that you hated,
no,
or you had to doctor up?
I can honestly say no. I think it was a good decision not to put whiskey in the saison barrel, and the gin was really cool out of it. It's maybe not for everybody, but it's still very interesting. If you have a decent whiskey going into it, it's only going to enhance to a certain extent off of what was in there. So fortunately, we have not. No one's putting Miller Lite into a barrel. They're putting something with character, and that's going to lend it well to the bourbon. So, fortunately, no. That's an easy answer. We haven't had a dud.
And especially if you're kind of giving them the barrel you had to do it with, you're getting some layering of flavors going on besides what they had. You're laying down like 2 or 3 things and kind of pulling that back out. So I dig that. And the one I have here is the one that's finished in a Cabernet, and it is pretty tasty. I was gonna say, you see a lot of port and sherry, but not too much Cabernet and some other ones. So this is kind of one of the different ones. I think this one turned out really well. So, and
that's the one we worked with Duck Creek down there. So I gave him that barrel, and then we aged that particular whiskey starting off in just a used cask, a 15-gallon cask for almost 3 years, and then we finished it in the wine cask for another 6 or 7 months. We've done port wines with him, white wines. He does a Marquette wine, which the wine itself out of the bourbon barrel is fantastic, but what finish it does to the whiskey is excellent. It's a northern grown grape, so we don't have too many of those up here. It's nice to have something like that.
That's cool, and especially since they're giving you a bottle, because it'd be nice to taste like the progression of what happened. Like this was the bourbon, this is the wine, this is the bourbon that kind of came out of it. So that progression, I think, is pretty cool. I mean,
absolutely.
And everyone's praising your gin.
Gin, it's good.
I'm seeing that from Matt and Schwimmer. They're saying your gin is pretty damn tasty.
Yeah, we
I
was never a big gin guy myself, but I wanted to make one that wasn't so juniper forward, like your father drinks. My father likes his gin, and that's good, and he doesn't care for mine as much because he likes his. That's all right. I'll make one that he likes one of these days. But so we don't we don't use a lot of the juniper in it. We use other things that are common like lemon peel and coriander, but 2 things we get that are unique, and we literally walk through the woods. One is wintergreen. The plant wintergreen grows wildly. I mean, I could walk 20 feet from where I'm sitting right now, and it's out there in the woods. So we use that, and it gives a little mintiness. And then we also use pine in the sense that we actually make it pine vodka. It's not the needles, but what we do is we take branches that are less than half an inch thick, and they're very bendable. We peel all the bark off of them with a potato peeler. That's where the sap is. That's where the sweetness is. And then we add that into the gin component, so it gives it that woodsiness flair to it. I did a batch, by the way, last batch we did with gin with a little hibiscus in there too, and a little bit less on the coriander just to play with it too. But this is a whiskey show, obviously, and I'm not a huge gin guy, and I'm not sure if the other 3 of you are, but I could see gin. That's a quick answer, Mike.
We've had this conversation a few times because we're like same thing. Like, that funky old gin that just
We've
For those-
tried
for-
and tried, but yeah, I just haven't.
For those
not been able to
few
get into
gin
it.
people that might be listening tonight, gin will continue to get interesting because as long as you have the juniper, what else? I mean, the sky's the limit as to what you could put in there. So I mean, the gin's interesting. It's good. I enjoy it. It's actually good sipping. The nice thing we do is we actually distill our own vodka first and then turn that back into the gin. So we're not buying bulk GNS. We're actually making it from start to finish here.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like the way you're doing it. Where you're saying you're taking like the basically the bark of the tree and kind of adding that in. But yeah, I had that experience when I was younger, and my mom and dad weren't horribly big drinkers, but we went to a wedding and they kind of started pushing drinks on me, and this is where I was on the age of being 21, where I knew they knew I had drank, and I was like, "Is this a trap? Like am I really supposed to take these?" And then like I had them, and I'm like, "This was a trap. Why would anyone drink this?" Because it was crappy gin, and it just tasted like pine salt, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "You can take this back." I'm like, "I'm not."
Well, we actually we have a lot of fun with our customers because everyone comes in and they complain, "No, do you like gin?" "No, I hate it. Tastes like pine trees." Well, try ours because we actually use pine in ours, but it doesn't taste like a pine tree.
Yeah.
No.
And there's a local distiller here that when I did their tour, I tried their gin, and they're using lemongrass and lavender in it.
Yep.
And it was unique, and it was the first gin I tried just straight. I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. So I think it's more or less just trying different ones and figuring out what you like or don't like in it. But I like to see people playing around and moving beyond the kind of traditional notes that you find in a typical gin. So
yeah, and thing for us, I mean, I guess I can point. You can see this still right over here. That's it's small. It's only a 20-gallon still, so we'll just do batches that might make 5 cases. So what's the worst thing that happens? You screw it up and it's no good. I mean, we can try little batches like that all the time. We do other things with that besides the gin too, like the bacon jalapeno, where we had fresh bacon and peppers.
Ooh.
Okay.
Oh,
my
Alrighty.
goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's some
Sign me up.
interest in that. 'Cause
there might be a Bloody Mary or two that's had that in there, but
Oh man.
nope.
Yeah.
I could see that, and that's
Yeah.
I was telling someone else like a lot of times in winter I'll have jalapenos on pizza and other stuff just because I want to get like that kick to warm back
Yep.
up.
Yep.
That does sound like actually a really good.
Mhm.
It sounds awesome in a Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shot my brain for
Back to whiskey. Back to whiskey.
back to whiskey.
Rambler.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that. Where do you guys get most of the grain that you guys are using? Is it local? Or do you ship?
Yeah, we've worked since day one with Brees, which is a big company that mills all their grains out of Chilton, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
It's funny actually. I've did a batch last week from a farm 20 minutes from us. They gave me a couple 100 pounds of their cracked corn to play around with, and I did in fact. And they were interested in buying a mill and seeing if we could do a little more with them. Emailed me today, the guy did, as a matter of fact, and he says he's got another 1,000 pounds if we want to mess with it. So I'll go down later, and I'm going to do a comparison. I mean, I love working with Brees. They're so consistent, but there's also a part that wants to say, I went down to their farm and picked up grain from something 20 minutes from us,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I know the farmer and his stuff. So we're gonna mess around with that a little bit too. Either this week or next, and kind of want to do a comparative, exactly the same bourbon recipe that we've been doing for 6 years. See what the taste does, see what the yield does, all the comparatives that we have a lot of data on, and compare and see how it works versus ours. I mean, it may or may not be what we would use going forward, but either way, we'll work with them because it's going to be something different. And back to maybe it might be a one-off, a one barrel we do of theirs, but that's why we do that sort of thing.
Well, and then, like I said, even if you're doing the same one, it could be a different release. It can be a different name,
Absolutely.
different flavor profile. So there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm guessing you're going down by Chilton because they do a lot of malted barley and barley down there. There's not too many places around here where you can get that. So
No, I mean they got on the map because they did all the malts, and especially with the beer end of it, because of all their specialty malts. They have something called the brewing library where they send you all these different ones, the chocolate malts, the pilsners, you name it, and they that's what got their company as popular where it is. But of course they can mill corn and they could do rye and everything. We actually did a really cool project with them winter before last, was a little bit of a challenge because they called me in November and said, we have our company's annual party in January, and we'd like you to do something for us. We'll provide you with all the grains if you can do this special, make it something unique. And like, I've got 2 months. Okay, we got this. And I'm talking to them and said, well, just,
I guess we're starting tomorrow.
Yeah, just do something like vodka. I'm like, well, that won't be very unique then. So let's see what I can do. And I called our barrel supplier. We use Barrel Mill out of Minnesota. And I talked to a couple other people. Bottom line is what we did is we got their chocolate malts, their caramel malts. We essentially did a bourbon recipe because it was mostly corn. It was about 55% corn. And then we had malted barley in there, but then we used the chocolate and caramel, and we aged it in 2 barrels. We threw 3 of those big staves in there. And then whenever we dump our bourbon barrels here, anytime we save the loose char that comes out, every little bit of that we threw in there. So we tried to do this rapid aging 2-month project for them. It turned out really neat. They were making a couple signature cocktails at the dinner that night where they had their employee party and everybody got a little bottle. But we had about a half of a barrel left, and I just let sit, and we pulled that out a year later, just a couple months ago. And allowing it to go an extra year in that barrel versus 2 months was an unbelievable difference from one to the next. And we actually kept another couple barrels in there, which is still sitting. Let's see what another year does to it. So, I mean, you talk about something you've never tasted before. Pat, you were at Distill America. I don't know if we had one little bottle of that out at the start of the night, and I think I saw you later on the night, so you probably missed out.
I think I missed out on that one. Mike and I were trying to go around, but there's so many damn tables.
I know.
You get lost and turned around in there, and then you're 10, 12 drinks in, and you need to go get something to come back.
Yeah. You have all the good intentions of hitting everything, and then after a while, you're like, nah,
not a good idea. It's really nice working those things because you can hit what you want, but then you're controlled a little bit too.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had one little 375 of that out there. It's really unique. I mean, when you combine what they do in beer and then with the spirits and the different malts and all that, you're sick of me saying it, but the sky's the limit as to what can be done with whiskey.
When you were just mentioning what you had, what you put into it with the malts, last week we did an episode with Alan Bishop from Spirits of French Lick, and they were using caramel malt, like 10% in a lot of their stuff.
Yep.
So when you were saying you're mixing the caramel and the chocolate kind of malts in it, I got like, a little flutter in my heart for a second. Like, yeah, we were just talking about that once you got off the stream about, wow, could we do something like this? Because it sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Like up the amount in there, but kind of like you said, kind of layering the malts like that are a little bit different sounds.
If I was going to do it over again, I'd do more of the caramel and less of the chocolate because the chocolate's obviously pretty overwhelming. It's kind of that coffee chocolatey. So it was really good. But if I was going to make a whiskey that I wanted to sip, I would balance that off: more caramel, less of the chocolate. It's pretty rich. It's pretty cool.
But no, it sounds like you said adding a couple years onto it. That sounds exciting. Now I do feel like we missed out on that, Mike. But I'm sure we missed out on tons of things.
I missed out on so many things.
Just so many things. But yeah, you're planning on going back there again this coming year, I assume, to Distill America? Oop, hold on. We might have lost Pete for a second. He'll come back.
Frozen.
Just give him a second. It'll kick around in a minute. Otherwise, we'll pull him off and on.
So what's everybody in the chat drinking at this point? Got a few people in there, so what are you guys all enjoying? I know we'd asked earlier, but since a lot of people have joined in.
Give me a second. I'm going to push him out and pull him back on, see if that... well, whatever, he locked up. I'll bring him back on once I see him kind of jump back in there.
He was probably just telling us all of his secrets right there.
Yeah, we were probably getting in trouble is what happened, and he got to both. I'm not going to let you know what we're planning on doing in the next couple months. I just already did.
Just do that on purpose. Well, we're working on click.
You guys talk for a second. I'm going to email him back. I'll be right back myself.
Okay.
All right. So Ben, what have you moved on to?
I've gone to the Rua, the port finish single malt, and the proof on that, the sweetness standing up to the cigar really nicely. I don't know, something about that 6 and 20, the wine finish on that one. I think I like a little bit better with this cigar than I do the Rua. As good as that Rua is, but
That Rua is strong though. I mean, it's just,
it is. It kind of. I mean, and this isn't a weak cigar by any means, but it kind of is dominating a little bit. So
yeah.
I think it balances a little better with that 6 and 20.
We figured your partner probably kicked you off. You're like, you're giving away too many damn ideas about what we're doing. Just yanked
I
you
think
off.
it's we're in the Northwoods here. The internet goes out.
Hey, you're doing pretty good. That's nothing crazy here. So no big deal.
Peter, you were talking about the different grains and stuff. Before we started, you were mentioning how much you guys are using malted wheat in a lot of your mash bills. Tell me about the malted wheat and what does that bring to the table versus just, standard winter wheat or red wheat or whatever people are using. Why do you go with the malted wheat so much? What's that for you?
Yeah, it started actually before I decided to open a distillery. I went over to New Richmond, Wisconsin, and I did a 2-day class with Paul Werney, who does this fantastic stuff that he makes. And the end of the second day, we're rolling out different barrels. We had a bourbon and a rye, and then he pulls out a wheat whiskey. I said, I've never had a wheat whiskey. This is, I got to try it. And the taste of the wheat, it's closer to a bourbon than a rye, but got a little more softness to it, a little sweeter, I would say. And I fell in love with that wheat whiskey. So once we decided to do this, I wanted to try to keep wheat into our components as much as possible. So not only just the wheat that's in the recipe, because we use a regular red wheat in our bourbon recipe, but then we also split the malts typically between the barley and the wheat. And then we continue to play with that, like in the rye whiskey, which we're releasing tomorrow, that had all malted wheat in there versus barley too. Just there's no wrong combinations, and because this is my distillery, I can put wheat in if I want to. I guess that's a short answer as to why we do that. But I enjoy that flavor that comes from a wheated whiskey, and I guess I don't understand why. Maybe it's just because it's not a popular segment of the market. Journeyman's does a couple different versions of wheat, and we do ours, and there's a few others, but wheat doesn't cost any less or any more. It's not like rye, which is very challenging to work with. It's not as easy as corn, but it's better behaved than rye. I love the flavor, and so we continue to do more and more with the wheat. Bottom line,
I think it adds a nice richness to the wheat when you're doing it.
Yeah.
I was going to say like a nice kind of earthy depth that you don't always get from the wheat, where sometimes some of the barrels can kind of take over on it. I know you said you were getting yours from Minnesota, so I'm assuming they're using like Minnesota oak in them.
Nope. Well, most of the time they're actually using a Missouri oak.
Missouri oak. Okay, so
you get a better pore size in the oak. They use a little bit, probably more in the end caps there. But if you talk to them, they'll tell you that most of their sourced from Missouri.
Okay, that's good, because that's where I was going to ask, because we've had a couple that were using Minnesota oak, and our friend Mitch, who's a distiller, not allowed to say where, somewhere in Kentucky. He was explaining how the Minnesota oak, since we have much smaller winters, the rings are tighter, and you actually get more of kind of like a spicy note out of it, rather than you do the kind of the sugars that you would expect kind of like from a Missouri oak. And I was saying that I wasn't getting any of that, like a Minnesota oak, out of yours, because it is kind of like a little sweeter compared to that, because I was confused the first time I had one of those. I thought there was rye in the damn mash bill, and I was like, there has got to be this in here. And I was like, Mitch, we're past 5 minutes. What the fuck is going on, Mitch? How is this tasting like rye? And he's like, it's not. It's the barrel. I'm like, oh, well, Jesus. I'm like, I had no clue at that point, but I was not getting that out of there. So that's why I'm glad you explained that, because I was like, well, if it's coming from there, it's probably that. But that's awesome. So I'm glad that you said that, because that's totally helpful when I'm trying to discern things.
So you had said before the show started, you were talking about a style that you're starting to make. But is there one that you just won't make? Is there, if you can talk about the one you're talking about, and I'm curious if there's a whiskey, I just do not want to make this.
Whiskey wise, no, there's not one I don't want to make, because I'm very equal opportunity when it comes to whiskey. People ask me a lot, are we going to do gosh, I'm completely blank. What's the stuff with the favorite thing, Pat? You like the black licorice? Absinthe. Absinthe is on the list, but it's down here on the list. Okay, so we might play with that. But from a whiskey standpoint, no, we want to try everything. Even I'm not a big fan, even though that's what got me into whiskey, was Irish whiskeys. To me, when you triple distill, means you lean it out and you make it a little thinner. And I like something a little bit more meaty, but that's just me. I think a lot of people enjoy, obviously, Irish whiskey. So we'll play with that third distillation, see what it goes. But yeah, we were talking about single malt Scotch style whiskey. In particular, we got some really peated malts from BSG, Brewer Supply Group. Oh, man, it's just Lafroig, Octomore, something on that line. Just boom, smacks in your face. And I love that sort of stuff.
So did we find our 15-gallon barrel we're doing, guys? Is that what you heard?
So I saw an Irish distiller.
Yeah,
I saw an Irish distiller last week that they're doing a Irish rye they're using a little bit of oats, but they're also using some peated malt, and that just totally intrigued me to think, okay, a rye with some peated malt in the mash. That just sounds really intriguing.
Yeah, we've talked about actually trying to like peat smoke corn too. I mean, why not? To do a peated bourbon. Everybody drinks bourbon. Why not a peated type bourbon like that too? But you know, I'll reach maybe when you guys talk in 1 second. It's about 3 feet away from my reach sitting here. The Glen Eagles peated malt that we did. It's still a white dog, but I mean, it's right there. It's everything you want in a Scotch type whiskey like that. And we are just going to wait till we get through this whole pandemic hurdle before we actually order in all the grains and start working on that too. So, because if I was going to sip something tonight, because this was my last night, it would be on the order of an Ardbeg or a Lafroig or something on that really smoky one. Because
yeah,
that's the top in my book right there. And I don't do that yet, and I need to be doing that. So. That's where we're after.
And that's, I think we were talking about that, is how American single malts are kind of the new wave expression of where stuff is kind of headed. He's going to get it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about wiggling the table, but there's a little bit in a 2-liter cask right now, but that's just what's sitting out there as the white spirit. This is 110 proof right there, but man, it fermented well and it distilled great. We double distilled it, and it's just everything you want in that scent when you bring it. We tried 2 different. There was a Simpson peated malt and the Glen Eagles, and just maybe I like the name of the Glen Eagles better. So we went a little more towards that direction of the one we really enjoy. But yeah, we'll be working on that. Of course, you know, our customers want that. You can have it ready soon. Yeah, probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We'll have it ready for you.
Do you have any anticipation of what it'll be like in your environment and with your spirit versus the peated Scotch?
Yeah, there's so many differences that go into it, but this is totally opposite of every other whiskey we've made. I mean, we've gotten into whiskey to explore what we can do using our barrel size, our water, our environment, our yeast, everything like that. We're not trying to, I'm not trying to make mine taste like Jefferson's or you name it. Ours is going to be what it is. I want something on this end to taste a lot more like you would traditionally see in a very peated Scotch. So that's our goal. How we achieve that's going to be challenging because of the water source and the aging. But if we can use the used casks like that, we can even simulate the aging where we stick it in a non-temperature controlled corner where it's cool and damp, for example, versus our normal aging environment, which has a lot more temperature swing. If we can kind of protect it a little bit, which is more like what a Scotch barrel will do, they're a lot less temperature swing. Let it sit longer and see. I mean, we'll find out if we did or we didn't in 10 years. That's the hard part. But that's the excitement about waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
That is. Well, and on that note, just like Ardbeg, I mean, the wee beastie is only like 4 or 5 years old. So, I mean, there might be something before it jumps to that point where you start seeing the path and you're like, okay, this is right up the alley of where the hell we were aiming.
Yeah, and we'll do the same thing. I mean, we've done a straight up similar one in a 5-gallon cask, and it's been there 4 months, 5 months right now, so too soon to try. But in a year in a 5-gallon cask that's been used, that'll give us at least an idea where we're heading on that. And that's not the peated one; that's just a regular malted barley, straight 100%. But then this one we'll do the same thing: try it in 5s, try it in 10s, and then go from there.
All right, and a couple of questions from the chat. Spencer was wondering about when your single malt is going to be coming out.
I'll be on AARP by then, but but we'll make it. We're gonna barrel this stuff this summer. I mean, that's
Okay.
that's the goal, is to get stuff in cask right away this year. We've done our small tests. We like the malt we have. We like the yeast we use for it. Now we just need to put in a bigger scale and then get it into the casks and then wait.
When you were talking about ARP, since my parents were significantly older than me, I was one of like maybe 3 children at the age of 16 that was covered by ARP on their insurance for driving, which was a hell of a thing to explain to a cop. And I got pulled over once. They're like, "This is fake." I'm like, "No, I'm covered by ARP. Like, you check it." I'm like, "I'm telling the truth." So it can happen before then. And Paul was wondering, do you have a bottled and bond coming out? He makes allusions to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's kind of what we do already. It's just without the title. There's I'm sure we'll do something like that at some point. We got to get through the scotches and the brandies, which is kind of what 2020 is for us right now. But I mean, essentially, bottled and bond was to signify that you actually made it yourself, and that's what we do here. So just lacks a few of the little details and, of course, the title. But yeah, that's it's getting trendy right now. You guys would probably all know. You're seeing more and more of that bottled and bond coming out. Yeah,
it's neat. I was gonna say, where I think Wollersheim was doing a bottled and bond. They did the bourbon, but they also were doing a brandy, and I thought it was maybe more applicable to the brandy, kind of going with like the vintage version of like a wine with it. Not to say that the bottle and bond it was actually very good, but I was just saying it's neat. But I think like with whiskey, a lot of times if what you're getting at the end, when you saw the age statements come off of a lot of bottles, or the respect for no age statement whiskeys come out, you're more excited about the end flavor.
Yeah, bottle and bond really doesn't change the whiskey necessarily. It maybe throws a little more definition saying that you did it, but it doesn't change the end product. So it's like a prettier picture on your label, which is fine. It works. I mean, I bought a bottle or two because I like the label. I'll admit it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for labels sometimes, or just bottle shape in general. Sometimes that will catch my eye. And I'm just honest about it. I was in marketing and PR, and every now and then I'm like, I'm going to get this. I'm like, it's probably terrible, but.
So this whole new TTB regulations that are coming out May 4th
really?
basically gives us a lot more flexibility. For example, certain things that you had to have on the front of the bottle from ever. Now you can just, as long as they're on a label somewhere on the bottle, and they showed an example, you could literally have a bottle. The front just has in handwritten whiskey on it, and that's all you need on the front of the bottle. And as long as you have the important stuff on the back that you need, the fill volume and whatnot.
Okay.
So they're giving us more flexibility. Of course, the comment is make sure that your distributor has it lined up properly on the aisle at the liquor store too. But that's interesting. So you're going to see more and more with the dynamic and more things you could do with your labeling. You get more creative instead of having to fit into this little box that they've thrown us in for many years.
Oh, and filling out requirements for bottle and bond and TTB labeling can be a big, huge pain in the ass. So
yeah, I know there was actually an update on that as well. I didn't pay too much attention to that portion of it, but bottle and bond is actually, you're probably see it more now because they've relaxed some things on there too.
Oh, okay. Well, I know they were pretty damn strict before, but yeah, It's just, I don't know. TTB and I have issues. I've had questions with a few bottles that I've seen, and I'm like, well, this isn't right. Just like you look at what's on there, and I'm like, well, this isn't an accurate statement. I'm like, how the hell did this get through? And then we talked to some other people like Jolie last week. She's like, really, you just have to, if you really wanted to, you could submit the label 3 times, and hopefully you could just get someone who's like, oh, I like this. It's okay.
That's absolutely how it works. But we literally submitted something that was one of our flavored products, and the only change was one was honey lemon, one was honey lemon cranberry, or moonshines, and we submitted the second one, the honey lemon cranberry. Everything else was exactly the same, and then whoever reviewed ours wanted a statement of how we distilled the whiskey in the first place, and this and all that stuff. The other one just stamped it. So, what's if you run and get geeky and talking about labels and all that, what you do is you get a bottle. And we actually, anytime we get a bottle to sample, we put it in a hydrometer and actually check what the alcohol content is versus what's on the label. And some like the Still and Oak, for example, I got that recently, and it was Dan right on. So Guy Rayhorst, he's doing a good job. But there was another one we pulled. It was like an 80 proof bottle of vodka was about 77. You know, it was way out of there. So yeah, if you want to get geeky and have a little fun, that's what we do with labels.
It sounds like a fun way to kind of take your anger out at the end of the week. Like,
Yeah.
oh, screw you guys. Or how did you get away with that? That's not even cool.
Haven't been caught yet. That's all.
So we've been sitting here in the background staring at I've been looking at all your distilling equipment back here. Tell us a little bit about the stills and what you're running.
Yeah, so I mean, we started off with 2 small pieces of equipment, an 80-gallon and a 26, and then most distilleries will have like one big pot that has a bunch of different columns coming off it, something our size pleased. But because we already had 2 working stills, I wanted something a lot bigger. First of all, which is this one right here. It's 1,000 liters.
We understand that problem here.
1,000 liters.
We do that all the time.
So that's kind of our main workhorse. It does our mashing and our first strips. But actually behind me, if I get out of the way, is our 80-gallon still, which we had from day one, where we do all of our spirit runs on our whiskey. Okay. And we actually used to have a 4-plate column on it, but we crafted a worm because I wanted to get a little more traditional. And I actually thought the 4 plates was taking it and making it too lean. So we wanted to capture a little more flavor. That's why we got the whiskey helmet. I'll just get out of the way. That's why we created the whiskey helmet, which is right there. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the worm. So it's a little more traditional. And the goal was that to try to capture a little more flavor of the grain and not strip so much out. And then, of course, our vodka still, which is behind me, is made by Still Dragon. It's called a Crystal Dragon. And when it's operating, it's 10 plates. You can see everything going on there because it's a glass column, as you can see through there. And it's really cool because you can see all the reflux going on in the still, and you can see it from the tasting room, which is right in front of where I'm sitting. And so we have 4 working stills, our old vodka still, which is the one we do the gin on and some other flavors. And then on the flip side of the computer over here is a little 10-gallon R&D still, which is what we do most of our product development on, like the agave we've been working on or the single malts. We run it on that scale. So you're literally fermenting 5, 6, 7 gallons at a time. And I'm just getting maybe 1,500 milliliters of product by the time it's all said and done. But it's enough to tell you whether you want to keep going with it or not.
Yeah, rather than be invested and be like, ugh, like not where we wanted to go with it.
That's exactly, and it's such a low risk, so why not? That's why we play with it. I mean, that's what I wanted to do anyway, starting, but it makes it very easy for us to do that. This still over here, this vodka still, by the way, it's kind of almost turning green because we've been making so much sanitizer out of that stuff. It's time for a good cleaning and put it back to beverage alcohol.
I saw that with someone else's where I was like, this is what's coming off of it. I'm like, it looks like freaking algae. I'm like, it doesn't look like sanitizer. It looks like there's an issue with it. Yeah, we bought 2 totes of the stuff. It's more of a fuel grade, and we bought it straight up like that, but now we're distilling that to purify it ourselves. So that's what we've been running for the last couple of weeks here, every day. Yeah, well, and like we said, you're kind of getting through that because it sounds like this is like the low point of the season in general. Yeah, for us up here, absolutely. I mean, it's between the ice fishing and the snowmobile season, and it's before summer. So it's if anything is good out of this, it came at the right time for our particular location. Yeah, so. Yeah, I agree. It's not fun with that, but we appreciate what you're doing because it's always nice to get that out to the people and help people out and hospitals and all sorts of different places that actually use that. And if you could make a little bit on it as it's going, kind of helping people, and like you said, it's not ideal, but
keeps us working, keeps us busy. That's what we want.
But you're back to doing actual whiskey and stuff now, right?
Yep, we're actually we're running rye this week. We actually fermented rye last weekend, and we got to strip some more tomorrow and do a spirit run of rye tomorrow as well. And then we typically have 2 or 3 stills going at a time, so we'll have 3 of them going tomorrow. And then we'll be playing next week with our hopefully the bourbon mash with the corn we get from the farm down the road from us. If I can get down and pick it up from him. If not, we'll do that the following week.
Oh, that part does sound pretty interesting, like you said, because that brings that whole grain to glass thing a little bit closer and bringing it kind of home. Not that, like I said, I understand Chilton. Like I said, there's rarely any places you can get barley or malted barley in the state. There's a lot of people that pull the stuff from Chilton for that.
No, and I can tell you this: I've tried other companies against the stuff I get from Chilton, and their yields are so much better. They're so consistent. I have zero reason not to continue to work with them other than, hey, maybe I can buy 1,000 pounds and do a couple special batches with them because.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's the way you're doing it with experimental releases. I think that would kind of falls right into that. Like, here's this kind of new experiment thing or something we played with. So I like all the experimental runs you're doing because there's not enough people dabbling or playing with that, and they're kind of afraid to do that. So that's awesome. Yeah. Oops, sorry.
It's what we do.
But we are getting close to that hour mark, and we don't like to hold people up because we know you have a life. And now that we pulled you 2 hours later than what you thought you were going to be doing, I'm feeling great about that.
I could talk whiskey until tomorrow, easy. That's all good.
Yeah.
But I really like the kind of bring someone in and distill your own whiskey thing. I mean, I think that is a superior idea.
Absolutely.
Just branding and pulling people in. That might be something we look at doing because that sounds like something pretty exciting to do. Especially with some of the malts and other peach. I don't know. My head's spinning.
So you've already got your label and your logo, so that's one step down.
It is, but then it's the argument over the whole malt thing we talked about, and then the peat thing, and then it just I got lost. I just got lost thinking about it again, so I got to calm down. But yeah, that is something that I think is really unique about you guys, and I know I thought about that because it's usually when you have that class, it's just like a Saturday, and I love that it's on a Saturday because if you're headed up there for the weekend, it's like, hey, come hang out with us for the day. Let the family go do what they're doing, learn what's going on, and then go meet up and have dinner at the end of the day, and still enjoy the whole weekend. So I thought that was really
except that your head will be spinning.
Well,
that's what we do to you.
That happened. I mean, that's supposed to happen. So
that's a good problem.
That's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When everyone's ordering stuff, you're like, give me the napkin. Like, I'm trying to write down a mash bill, damn it. I think I have it down. I don't know if I do or not, but that's something that's pretty sweet. So, thank you for coming on the show, Pete. We'll be happy to have you on again. Like I said, we'll have some reviews of this probably out next week. They're in the mail to Ben and Mike at the moment. And thank you for finding a way for it to get to me. We that is insane that you guys did that.
I think Matt's been texting me during the show, so he was our bootlegger. So thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I think Matt in the chat as well too. And I mentioned to him like when this kind of clears up, like maybe we'll get together and I might have some things he hasn't tried, but he said he makes some trips up there every so often. So if I plan on getting up there anyways myself, but we might make him a mule once or twice.
Yeah,
we love our mules.
Every so often, if Matt says every so often, that's an understatement.
Yeah, but yeah, we do have there's a great muling line in America as far as that goes. There's things that make it to places that they're never supposed to be. Yeah. Even to Canada from time to time, but that does take a little bit longer.
It's a secret mule train.
Yeah, secret mule train. But like I said, thank you for coming on, Pete. We appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to having you on again. If you guys you have any other releases coming out, we'd love to have you on. Let's talk about the rye or something else once you get kind of moving as summer starts going, because it sounded like just from the shows and stuff, besides the distilling and everything you're doing great, that the shows you put on you're making it an entertainment destination.
That's the whole thing. It's an experience, right? We got to learn and appreciate what we're doing.
Yeah,
all good.
Because because Pete and I forget who was with him. That's my bad. So it made it sound like you could have had a 5 times bigger distillery space for the excitement that goes on there. When Pete,
There's a little bit of that. Yep.
that's the right type of smile I want to see when that comes up. It's like, yeah, we could have used it bigger, but we also want it manageable.
Yeah.
So, thank you for being on. Appreciate it, Mike, Ben. Always thanks for stopping in. Everyone in the chat, thank you. It was great seeing new faces and some of the new subscribers this week. Thank you very much. We'll be happy to see you. I think Saturday we're doing our next one where we're going up to Canada to Silver Fox Distillery. We're going to be talking with them. They're kind of a new distillery that came out in the past year, so we'll be talking to them about some of the stuff they're doing. But from our den to yours, remember it's. Oh wait a second. Do you have anything else going on exciting that's coming up, Peter? I don't mean to cut you off. I mean, I just with the virus, everyone's not doing stuff. But what are some new releases? What's some other stuff you got going on, kind of planned for the summer or this year?
Yes, we have a lot of excitement coming on. Short answer. We got our spring favorite coming out this week, which is bourbon finished in a maple syrup cask too. Of all the double barrels we do, that's probably the most popular. 90 proof, but it's got a little nice sweetness from the syrup itself. So this summer won't be too many because of what we've been doing is going to require more time than we have to get it out right away. But those will continue to come out. And about 2 years from now, we're going to see a lot of neat things coming up.
I don't know. Well, what you have already is pretty interesting. So
yeah, good.
All right.
Can't wait to try
so from I got to switch over. All these extra buttons to press. So from our den to yours, remember, it's not the size of the den that matters. It's the love of whiskey. Cheers, everyone out there.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3.